Welcome to The Money Puzzle. My name is Randy Major, and joining me today are Brian Ramsey and Chris Vaughn of Family Wealth Planning Partners. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
How are you today, Chris?
I couldn't be better.
And good to see you again, Brian.
It's good to see you again.
Thank you. So I want to first mention the name of the show. I love the name of your show, The Money Puzzle. It's so catchy, but it makes so much sense.
It's very fitting.
Really what it seems like today, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. I mean, where we came up with the name for the show is an analogy that we use with clients all the time. You've got lots and lots of puzzle pieces, but you don't necessarily know what the end result of the puzzle looks like, and you don't know if you have all the pieces.
Right.
So that's what we do, is we put that puzzle together. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, and I'll add one other piece. When you think about a puzzle, you know, I remember as a kid putting them together. My family always did one for Christmas, right? And we all had it laid out on the table. That was kind of our thing. You walk up and try to find a few pieces. And I always remember, getting the one piece that's got the little loop on it, and you're always trying to make sure it fits. Well, you would try to put it in. It didn't necessarily fit in that particular spot. It has a very specific spot it fits. It's very similar to all aspects of your financial life. They each have a specific place that they go. And if you don't make the right decision, or you don't make sure that that piece fits in the right spot, it can sort of change everything in your financial life.
It affects the whole puzzle.
It affects the whole puzzle. So you got to make sure that the right piece fits in the right place.
And that's why it's so important to be working with a professional to be sure all your pieces are going to fit so you can retire
exactly
with
right.
peace of mind. Right, guys?
That's exactly right.
So I know you've been so busy. So first, thank you for coming into the studio and spending time with us and giving the viewers such helpful information. Talk about your team and your approach a little bit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so our team is made up of several advisors. We all have different backgrounds. That's the cool part about our office, is we all have different areas of emphasis, or expertise that we have. We have different certifications, like Chris is long-term care has a long-term care certification. I'm not sure the exact title of it. I'm a CFP. And so that's what we wanted to build, was a coalition of advisors that have different backgrounds to kind of bring a different aspect to our business, so that we can look. If you're a one-man advisor, you can't be all things to all clients. And so as a team, we can be all things to every client, because we each have different areas of emphasis. So the team approach actually works for us.
Yeah, very well-rounded team you have there. What's the vibe been in the office? Do you feel like folks are coming in with more concerns with the way things are in the world today?
The newer clients, the ones where their plans are not fully developed, there's a lot of concerns coming in. What if this? How is this going to affect me? You know, the inflation thing that we talked about on another show, that one's a big concern. What happens if the market does this? Those kind of things are fairly common with the newer clients. With the clients that we have, that the plans have been fully developed and implemented, and we're into that good, healthy review cycle, not so much. They understand that there's going to be bumps in the road, and they understand that we've put in little levers that we can pull in their plan when these things happen. If the market takes a downturn, that's okay, because the only part of your portfolio that's really going to be impacted is that bucket that we're not going to use for another 15 years. That's okay. So the clients that have been around for a while haven't had too many concerns. They get it.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'll add one other piece to that. So you bring up an interesting point. So when the market's great, clients are cool, right?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily call in and go, hey, what's going on? But it's when the market has a downturn is when they get a little anxious, and they'll call in. But really, what they want to know is that you're still there and that you're on top of things. And number two, they want to make sure that we have stress tested their portfolio and their financial life in the form of a plan. We've stress tested enough times to show them, even in a down market, you're going to be fine. This is a long-term game. It's not a short-term play. And that's really what they want to know. Am I still good? Yeah, you're absolutely still good. Sure. Just don't open your statement next month or whatever. Kidding around. But really, that's it. It's just, don't stress about it. It's a long-term game. how the long-term plan is going to work out, and we're going to have bumps in the road.
Yeah. So today I want to get into retirement myths.
Oh, one of my favorites.
I'm sure there's a lot of these, and I'm sure the viewers at home are really going to love this show. What would you say the number one retirement myth is?
Ooh, wow, number one.
Which one you want to take? Do the 4% rule.
I was going to say 4% rule is probably the biggest one that you see.
Okay.
So the way that this myth works is the concept that you build up your portfolio to a certain number, and then that number you pull 4% out of it every year, and that's your income for the rest of your life. And if you do that, that portfolio will feed you. It'll give you that income source that you want. Once upon a time, that worked, and it worked fairly well, but you were also in a very high interest environment. So when you're talking about the 90s, even the 80s or before, it was not difficult to get 7-8% in a savings account at the bank. You could get 10 and 12% on CDs at the bank. These were investment products that were FDIC insured, things of that nature. So it took a lot of the risk out. If your savings account is growing at 6-7%, but you're only taking 4% out per year, it's not difficult to do that over an extremely long period of time. That doesn't exist anymore. We're in a very low interest rate environment. Most of us believe that is unlikely to change anytime in the future. You're just not going to see those anymore. Well, now out of those insured banking type products where you're getting half or maybe 1 or 1.5% on a CD, if you're taking out 4%, you're taking out more than what your investments are growing. So the myth comes in there, you're actually going to be eating that portfolio.
Oh, goodness.
Well, if we knew exactly how long you were going to live, we could figure out whether that's okay or not. But since we don't have that big variable, it makes it an improbable way to go about setting up your retirement.
And I'll add one piece to that. So another premise behind that is that if you had a pool of money and you were only taking 4% out, then the principal would remain throughout your lifetime.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of one of the core principles behind that. But the interesting thing is when folks come in to see us and we say, well, what are your goals? What are you ultimately looking to do? And they go through all these goals. What I almost never hear is, I want to leave the assets that I've accumulated throughout my lifetime, whatever that number is. I want to live retirement. I want that same number of assets to be given to my kids. We don't ever hear that. What we hear is, you know what, I want to live my retirement the way I want to live it. I want to go do the things I want to do. And if there's anything left over, fine, it can go to the kids. But the other thing, I'll give you a quick example. So we have a couple of folks that have come in before and they've said, hey, I've heard about this 4% rule. Is that I need to make sure that my plan says I can take 4%. So we explained to them, that's a myth. We really don't buy into that. And so when we show them cash flow, our software actually shows them distributions per year in the form of percent of their overall asset portfolio assets. So the interesting thing is, typically in the beginning of retirement, they wind up doing more things, right? Yep. They're free and they're saying, hey, I can now travel, I can go do all these things that I wanted to do that I wasn't able to do when I was working. And so their distribution rate may be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% for several years. But then they sort of settle back in, like, hey, I've kind of done all that already. So now I'm kind of settling back into retirement. And even further into retirement, we can see the distribution rates are in the 1% range. It's like, well, why are you so focused on 4%? If you only need to take out 1, why are you worried about 4%?
Right.
So the distribution rules at 4%, we don't buy it at all. We would say that's a myth.
So it's kind of like an old school mentality, old thinking, and retirement is so much different now. We need to update our thought process, right?
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk more about myths, but I know you have a very special offer for the first 10 callers watching the show today. Chris, do you want to tell them about it?
Sure. So for the first 10 callers at 844-900-5210, we're going to offer you a complimentary financial plan. Bring in all the pieces to your puzzle, and we will help figure out how to put those together so that you have that complete picture of what your retirement years look like.
Folks at home, if your puzzle is missing a piece, if it's incomplete, today's the day to pick up the phone and call and complete that puzzle. Give yourself peace of mind. What Brian and Chris are offering to you today is invaluable. 844-900-5210 is the number. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. This is a $999 value that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Welcome back to The Money Puzzle. I'm Randy Major, and Brian, Chris, and I are chatting about retirement myths today. This is a great show we're having, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
This is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, and I really feel the one I hear the most is living on less in retirement. Myth or not?
A total myth. Yeah, complete myth. Well, so the interesting thing is you hear that a lot. You hear it on TV and everything else. Oh,
Sure.
you live on 80% or 70% of your normal working spend. We just don't see that, I'll be honest. And in fact, when we actually run the numbers and we do a financial plan, in most cases, wouldn't you agree that we wind up seeing that clients spend more the very several years once they get into retirement than they were spending while they were working, because they're just able to do some things now. And so like, hey, let's go spend some money and do some traveling or charity work or whatever the case is. We often call it sort of they're now pursuing their passion field,
right.
Which can cause sometimes they spend money. So we often find that they do spend more. But here's the interesting thing is I can't imagine working for 40 plus years and being let's say you're spending average $5,000 a month, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you normally have spent. That's sort of your lifestyle. And then saying, well, I'm going to retire and now I'm going to live on, well, now I only have to live off $3,500 a month. Who would do that? That's not wild. That's certainly not why I'm working so hard and saving, is so I can spend less in retirement.
Who looks forward to a 25% pay cut? I mean, nobody does that.
Right, but I think it's just, you have that term fixed income in your mind and it gives you instant anxiety and you think, oh gosh, well, you have these big dreams for retirement, but can you make them reality?
Well, and the big dreams are the biggest part of the myth. There's a concept that during your retirement years you have go-go and slow-go and no-go. The concept there is that first part, that first third or 10 years or so of your retirement years, the go-go, that's when all these bucket list items that you've come up with for your whole life, all these things that you've always dreamed of doing, that's when you're actually going to experience them while you're in your younger years of your retirement. Those things are expensive. So to Brian's point, it's not a pay cut. It's a pay raise. In order to live out those dreams, you're going to have to give yourself a pay raise to pay for them. So that's why living on a fraction of what you were, total myth.
How good does it feel when you're able to debunk this myth for your clients? To be able to tell them, you're all right, go ahead and live.
Yes, I got a perfect story for that. So I had a client that came in a number of years ago. He was working in a high stress sort of retail environment. And we went down this road, and he was like, "Hey, well, I need to know that this is about what I spend. I need to know that I can continue to maintain that lifestyle." And so it's a really cool story. So we wound up doing a financial plan for him, and he had said, "Well, we got finished," and he was like, "Well, what if I retire a year earlier?" This was in 2018. So that was his goal. 2018, I want to retire, and he was like, "Well, can we run the numbers and make sure that I'm going to be successful if I retire in 2018?" Like, yeah. So then he came back and said, well, what happens if I retire at 2017? Do I have to adjust my lifestyle any? reran the numbers and said, absolutely, you can retire. No problem whatsoever. So he retired at the end of 2017. 6 months later, he got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And he said, before I go through treatment, I'm going to go do one thing I've always wanted to do, which was to pedal bike, not motorcycle, but pedal bike the entire Key West from one point to the other. Wow. And he did it. Came back, went through all of his treatments, and we kept in touch and all that good stuff. And afterwards, which was pretty interesting, he had said, there's no way that I would have made it through that treatment the way I did. He's in remission now, which is really cool. But he said, there's no way I would have made it through that had I not done the plan and known that I would have been successful retiring. Because he's like, the stress of my career would have been too much. I don't know that I would have made it through it.
Wow.
But the interesting thing is, he has spent the same amount of money every year, if not more in some cases, because he's a little bit of a spender, and he probably knows who I'm talking about when he sees this. But we joke about it all the time. But really, he's never once deviated his income, and he's still going to be successful. Every year he comes in, we stress test his portfolio again, and he's still going to be successful. So he didn't take a pay cut. As a matter of fact, he spent a little bit more right afterwards. So
I was thinking, I've got a client that I started working with a couple of years ago, and he has some health issues, and it's a concern that he's not going to be around too much longer, and she's going to live for a really long time. And he's working 3 jobs, trying to save up enough money, and they thought, we're going to have to take a 20-25% pay cut. To the question that you asked, Randy, we sat down with them about a year ago and said, okay, the one job that you have that is really stressing you out, it's causing a lot of consternation with both you and your wife. She's just worried sick about it to the point that it's harming her health. You want to know when he can quit that job. Now, here's the numbers. We can show you. You can quit that job now. You can continue working the other less stress jobs if you want to. But ultimately, you can retire whenever you feel like it. And you can continue to pay yourself the same amount of money you're making now, or even give yourself a pay raise. And it's a fantastic feeling, and there's usually tears in those meetings.
Yes.
And they're tears of joy, and it's so much fun when you get to go through that with somebody.
A perfect example, just to give yourself that peace of mind, is why it's so important to come and sit down and meet with professionals who know what they're talking about. I mean, it's just so worth it.
Yeah, and it's absolutely why we do what we do. Yeah. And that is the biggest reward we get, is that we get to sit down with a client and say, you know what, you don't have to take a pay cut in retirement. Yeah. You can still make it. And to see just the sheer joy on their face to say, you know what, that's awesome. I can go do that, and it's great. That's literally why we're in the business. Yeah.
So let's talk about a more conservative investment risk while you're in your retirement years. Myth?
Yes, absolutely. So where that myth comes from is, all right, so I'm in my working years, and my investment should be, fairly aggressive because I'm still putting money into it. Now I get to my retirement, and I've got to turn everything down so that I don't lose too much, a more conservative portfolio. And there are actually, it's a product called a target date fund that you see in a lot of 401ks that are designed to do exactly that. Here's where it's a myth. Your retirement is going to last 20, 30, 35, maybe even 40 years for some people, especially people who are looking to retire in their late 50s. How conservative should your investments be that you're going to be using in your 80s when you're only 60 years old? That's 20 plus years away. Well, if you were 40 years old and you were investing for your 60s, would you be conservative with those? In my opinion, no, you probably shouldn't be. So yeah, it's a myth because your retirement lasts over a long period of time. So you should have multiple types of investments during that window of time.
Well, thank you so much. We have to take one more quick commercial break, but we have much more about myths when we come back. Do you want to remind the viewer real quick about the offer you have for them today?
Absolutely. So for the first 10 callers at 844-900-5210, we're going to offer a complimentary financial plan. Come in, bring all your puzzle pieces. We'll help put those together. Find out what that looks for you so that you can make good educated decisions on all of the retirement things.
Absolutely. Well, folks, the number's on your screen. We're going to go to a quick break, but I do encourage you to go ahead and give us a call. The phone lines are open, 844-900-5210. More about retirement myths when we return.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Randy Major. I'm talking today with Brian Ramsey and Chris Vaughn of Family Wealth Planning Partners, having a great show about retirement myths today. All right, let's just dive right back in. We have a lot more to cover. Chris, is all debt bad?
Well, you do hear that one a lot. And I think, where that comes from is debt comes from spending. And if you've got a spending problem, then yeah, you can see where debt would be a bad thing. But all debt being bad, especially in retirement, not necessarily true. I began working with a client not too long ago that called me up and she said, we're getting ready to retire in January. So we were only a couple of months out. And we own a couple of pieces of real estate, our own and a rental property. And I want to pay those off out of my 401k before I retire. I said, well, how much money do you have in those 401ks? Basically, they were going to deplete their entire retirement savings in order to be debt-free. I said, you know what, before you do that, let's sit down and talk. And we developed a financial plan. And we said, okay, now we've got our plan laid out. We've got our goals here. All right, what happens if we pay off those debts that you were talking about in their entirety right now? Mm-hmm. It took the probability of success, which is one of the big drivers in the plan. It took that probability of success well down below where anybody was comfortable. And her concept was, but I was always told you're supposed to pay off all of your debt before you're retired. Well, that makes sense until you actually see the numbers. So in this particular case, what we decided to do was we were going to pay off some of it. But the rest of it, because the interest rates on that debt are so much below what they're getting on their investments, it actually takes their likelihood, their probability of achieving all of their goals way, way up. So debt is not necessarily a bad thing.
So I think I like this one. So are you saying I can tell my husband that my spending habits are okay?
No, you're good. He just needs to save more. No, I'll add one thing to that. Yeah. So is all debt bad? No. Most debt is bad. I think we all agree, student loan debt, credit card debt, yeah, that's bad debt, right? Let's pay that off. Mm-hmm. Mortgage debt, not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm going to go back to the conversation we had a couple shows ago. We were talking about sort of the arbitrage, right, of using cash versus paying down debt. And this is a conversation we have a lot with clients. And it's, if you've got an example is you have $200,000 in cash and you have a $200,000 mortgage. Is that mortgage bad? Well, I don't know. Let's see. And it really comes down to, where is your money most effectively used for you? So let's paint the scenario. You can pay off debt. Let's see, right now a 30-year mortgage is 3.5%, maybe something like that. So you can pay down 3.5% debt, but that takes $200,000 out of a portfolio and it pays off that debt. That's great. So it does make you debt-free, and that's a good thing. But you can also take that same $200,000 and put it in the market fairly conservatively and get 5 to 7%. So the question is, where is it most effectively used for you? Okay. And this is where I think where we come into play with clients, and probably one of the most important things we do is we provide the clients with the data side of that decision. What do the numbers tell you should do? Because in almost every case, I will tell you that the numbers are going to tell you to keep the money in the market and keep the mortgage.
Right.
Okay.
But then there's the emotional side.
Yeah.
And sometimes the emotional side will outweigh the data side. As an example, one of my very, very close friends, actually a fraternity brother, he called and he was like, hey, I got this bonus. I've got, I want to, should I pay off my mortgage? And I'm like, well, let's go through the numbers. So we literally go through the numbers, and I was like, dude, I said, hey, I call him dude. I said, hey, the numbers tell you shouldn't do it. And he was like, yeah, but I just want to be debt free. That's all I've ever wanted. And I'm like, then pay it off.
Yep.
Don't disregard what the numbers tell you, because that emotional side will outweigh the number side. Because if you don't do that, you're going to sit around at night and go, oh my gosh, I'm still making a mortgage payment. But at least they have the
Whatever
information.
causes you your stress is what you should adjust in your portfolio, because the whole idea is to retire stress-free.
Correct.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
the plan will give you the data so that, okay, now I understand what's going to happen. If I do this, if I pay off this debt, here's how that affects all the other pieces of my puzzle. And that's why it's so important to do it that way.
Well, guys, we only have 2 minutes left in the show, so I have one more quickly. Are Social Security benefits taxable or not in retirement?
Absolutely, they are.
Okay.
It's the only true double taxation. You paid taxes to have Social Security, and then based upon your income in retirement, this is where it gets a little complex.
Okay.
You're going to have to pay taxes on your Social Security that you receive. And it's interesting because it's done in blocks, and you hit that whole block or you hit all of the block above it. And it's 0, 50, and 85% of your Social Security is subject to tax. So it's easy to show scenarios where getting a very small pay raise or taking a small amount out of your IRA will actually cause you to pay more money in taxes than what you took out in the first place.
Okay.
So it's
Brian, do
very
you wanna
much
add to
taxable.
this?
Yeah, and I'll say that Social Security is probably the most important decision you make throughout your lifetime, financially speaking.
Yeah.
Because once you turn it on, it kind of is what it is. But that Social Security piece, you have to know all the pieces of your financial puzzle to understand when to turn that on. Because if you turn it on the wrong time, it can be taxed.
So
it
you
can
get
be
a redo if you turn it on. And
Well, you really don't get a redo.
You don't get a
right?
redo.
You don't get a
Okay.
redo. So once you
Okay,
turn it
good
on,
to
it kind of
know.
is what
You're
it is.
committed.
Although
All
I think in a couple shows ago we said that Chris did have a client that turned it on 1 month and they came in to see us, and we actually did go back and reverse it.
Oh,
But,
wow.
Yeah.
but that's not easily
not
done.
common.
Unique
Yeah.
situations where you can do that. Just work under the assumption that once you make that decision, you're committed for the rest of your life.
Well, thank
Right.
you for such good information. We only have 30 seconds left. Let's remind the viewers what they're going to get if they call today.
Give us a call today, and for the first 10 callers, we will do a complimentary financial plan, help you put all the pieces of your puzzle together in a way that works for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, viewers at home, for spending time with us today. The number's on your screen. Please do give us a call, and have a beautiful rest of your day.